Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempests rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whate'er may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fit it for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely, assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O men of God, have done with lesser things, give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O men of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O men of God, the church for you doth wait. Her strength unequal to her task, rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod, as brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God. Good evening. Greetings and salutations. Let's edify one another. Amen. Tonight is Acts class, and I think my compadre is here.
Sorry.
Maybe, possibly, perhaps.
Edify.
Go ahead and continue. Download the Bibles and commentaries, pretty much. And for him, I know. I'm assigning a task to O'Shea or to Ezra while he's in there playing tech for us. Hello. Bye-bye. Hi, Sam. Good to see you.
I will get more light on me in a second. I have a setup that I've been tagging and sharing. So
We accept the license agreement.
I look all green.
You can that is a touchscreen.
Do I not have a good connection? I look all grainy.
Well, that's because you are grainy.
Why am I grainy?
Because you don't have a good connection. You asked. You said it, not me.
Am I freezing at all?
A lot of times, the reason that you would have a grainy connection is because of poor lighting. Your camera is not designed for poor lighting.
Okay.
Like you need a flashlight under your chin or something. Here you go. That's funny. I lit up my my little pen light just as yours came on. So like, here you go, and yours came up, lit up your face.
That's not enough. Oh, maybe it is.
Sean, this is Acts class, and the answer is you can't. The Bible does not allow for that. One is saved through baptism, according to what Peter wrote in 1 Peter chapter 3.
Yep.
One cannot be saved before baptism.
By the way, Sean, you would be interested in public times this week. I know you'll be live about the time I'm going live. 6:45 was the winner of EST, so we'll have those studies an hour before let's read the whole Bible. Normally, I don't take up
I need a refill.
the
I'm
hour.
good too, by the way.
But every last Thursday of the month, I'm answering questions that get submitted to me in sermon form. So
The rhetorical question is a question whose answer is apparent in the question itself. Do I seek now to please God or to please man? That's a rhetorical question. How does one get saved before baptism is not a rhetorical question. One cannot be saved before baptism.
yep. I will make the event after this stream. I just didn't want to hijack the.
You better watch out, CJ. Someone's trying to back up into you. They got their beeper going and their lights.
That's funny. That's actually the flash.
I know what it is. But it's just hilarious because O'Shea was commenting. O'Shea was commenting on the Amazon delivery driver the other day, and he pulled into the driveway. He pulled past the driveway and backed up into. And the Amazon delivery trucks are supposed to have, instead of a backup beeper, their beeper is supposed to sound like a duck. So it's supposed to go quack 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 as you back up. And
That's spooky.
hey, look! CJ's doing Bohemian Rhapsody. But I think their quack fell flat. It was definitely not all it was quacked up to be, because it didn't quack.
Do we want to do one song or just get right in?
I think with as much difficulty as we've had been going through text, let's save the song for after we get done with this chapter.
Okay, I don't think we have a lot left, right?
We do not have a lot left in chapter 19. And Sean, since you're jumping off real quick, have fun with Sylvia. All right. Yeah. Rabbit. I'm alive. Okay, so okay, so I think we're going to be picking up in verse 35, running through verse 41. So if you want to bring us up to speed all the way up to 35, or up to to the end of verse 34, would be much obliged. Let's jump into. We went from 5 people down to 2. It must have been me.
Yeah, because I had a consistent 5 this morning.
Well, that wasn't evening edification.
But still,
where is Reba? Where is our favorite Reba at?
I can't tell. See, my Bible is still dark. I mean, I can. Why is this not enough? I gotta stand. It's on the highest.
What you need to do is bring out a lamp.
I don't have a lamp like that. And I don't have an extension cord.
Well, if you ever come visit us for chili supper, you're gonna have to just take one back with you. Of course, it might be just as easy for you to go down to your local Goodwill store and grab one anyway. But
well, I would have to get an extension cord also.
You can find those at Goodwill as well.
Okay. Alright, so Acts chapter 19.
Sam, you added an I in there on Reba's name. Okay, we need Reba, we need Angie, we need Heather, where is everybody? I'm feeling lonely.
Do you have anybody on tech so I can not stare at try and decipher words?
Oh sure, Ezra is in there on tech. Last I knew. He's supposed to be on tech.
Acts chapter 20 is about Paul and his journeys, and that's where we picked up.
Very good.
So in Acts chapter...
That's a real lifesaver.
In Acts chapter 20, we see the right at Ephesus, and so certain men of doom, a man named Demetrius, who made silver shrines to the goddess Diana. He's a silversmith who made silver shrines to Diana. Similarly to the reaction in chapter 16 of of the guys who um of the guys who were making money out of the demon possessed girl. Uh, in chapter 16, in chapter 19, it's the same thing. That he doesn't appreciate Paul's preaching to the goddess Diana. He's turned away many people, verse 26, saying that these gods are not gods, but it's interesting that Demetrius says these are not gods which are made by our hands. So Demetrius has some sense of, okay, I just made this type thing. And so, of course, there's an uproar, and Alexander is brought forward to kind of calm the crowd, kind of give a defense, but that really didn't work. And they ended up kind of with this mob mentality where they didn't know what the commotion was about. They were just going. And so for 2 hours, the people in Ephesus were uproaring the city and saying, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians." And we could say more details about that, like how Paul wanted to go into the people and the brethren did not allow him, lest he be mauled as it seems. But I think that'll suffice.
Well, it is interesting. There's been a lot of points that we've brought out throughout this chapter of interest, along with this occasion or this incident. But can you imagine a mob screaming and hollering for 2 straight hours? Great is Diana of the Ephesians. And Ezra will bring us up with the Bible there in Acts chapter 19, verse 34, so we can kind of see this in the text. But they cried out for the space of 2 hours, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians." Let me compare this, as it were, to people at a rock concert or at a concert, and they're getting antsy and upset. And hang on a minute. They're getting antsy. They're getting upset because the people are not on the stage. The group, the band isn't there that they wanted to see. And so they begin to stamp their feet and to clap or stomp and shout. And imagine that this was going on for 2 hours. We want the show. We want the show. Or in this case, great is Diana of the Ephesians. Great is Diana of the Ephesians. And well, I tell you what, the next morning, I bet you they were pretty hoarse.
About the hay sales started to rise too.
There you go. That's probably true. So in verse 35, as we pick up, they are, okay, where are they?
Aren't they in the city square?
Theater.
This
is the theater. This is not the city square. One thing with prominent Grecian style cities or cities that were Roman colonies, those who ascribed or aspired to greatness in the Roman and Greek empires, was that they fully adopted the Greek Greek way of life. And Diana was a Greek goddess who was then, I mean, actually, it was the Roman version of the Greek goddess, but still, she was, um, she had her own temple. She was the prominent deity of this city. And the city was a Roman colony. It was huge. It was not like, you know, a little backwoods hamlet that only had like 200 or 300 people. We're dealing with a mega city of, you know, of several thousand people. And this place had the temple. It had, and that was the main feature, by the way. But it also had schools. It had theaters where plays were put on. Symbolically, or not symbolically, significant with a theater is the fact that it would be formed in a bowl-shaped fashion. So today, our theaters are similar in, if you notice, most theaters do not have a flat, level floor. It is rather a ramped, angled floor. And what then in the Greek and Roman empires world, in their social world, what this was in an amphitheater, or something that was a complete bowl, and your stage was the center, the very bottom of this bowl. And this is where important speeches would have been made. This is where plays and orations would have been put on. And this is the same style of a makeup that schools, as in those like the College of Tyrannus that we read about in another city, would have been on the same par, the same pattern. So the reason being is because in that style of a construction, sound carries very well. It is a natural speaker. If you've ever noticed a speaker, thank you, CJ. If you've ever noticed a speaker is a circular device that has in its very center the magnet and and the sound board, and not board, but the sound fiber. I don't remember. I can't. Filament is what I think. What I'm trying to grasp at, which vibrates and amplifies the sound that is produced by the magnetic waves, the resonance. And well, that's kind of what an amphitheater does. That's what a theater does. And CJ shows you this. The Colosseum in Rome was built on a same style of a pattern. So we have an entire city, or rather a mob, here in this theater. And go ahead.
I was trying to find where the theater is mentioned.
The theater is mentioned in
verse
29, is it? 29, 30?
31. Sorry.
No, it's 29.
Oh.
29 is the first one.
Yeah. Sorry. I asked you and I glanced, and that was the word theater.
It was right there. You didn't believe me. Anyway, So here we have them, and essentially, this is what they do. They grab Alexander out of this mob and they pull him to the center. We saw that in verse 33. And Alexander is going to make his defense. He beckons with his hand. He's in the center, and they notice that he's a Jew. Up, we can't do that. And so the entire amphitheater, this entire theater erupts into this cacophony, this shouting of "Great is Diana of the Ephesians."
Mm-hmm.
Think of the tumult in this natural theater. What would have the city have heard?
A loud uproar.
A loud, constant repetition of "Great is Diana of the Ephesians," right? Because it would have bounced off of everything. Well, go ahead.
I imagine it like you have in those movies you have the war cry and they're over the hills and it just echoes.
When you were showing those theaters, Grecian, or did you do the one at Ephesus?
I typed in amphitheater Ephesus.
Okay, so this is really what it's like.
I'm sorry, I've been trying to. Oh, there it is. There you go. Sorry.
Look at this.
I couldn't figure out how to make it full screen.
But do you see? Think about what you're seeing right there.
Yeah, it's a dome, so the sound will bounce.
But it's not just that. What you're seeing is where the Apostle Paul was prevented from going in. Think about Paul actually going into this theater at some point in time, in the time that he spent at Ephesus.
He had a big audience. I thought CYC was big.
Imagine them sitting there.
Yeah.
So, okay, now when the town clerk, verse 35, as we go back to this, when the town clerk, go ahead.
Sorry. Would one speaker have to use something else to help his voice?
No.
Would it just echo?
A natural amphitheater, a natural theater like this, would amplify his voice so that even those in the top ranges wouldn't have to strain to hear what he was saying.
Interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Sam says Jesus, when his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus used the mountain. And that's a very good point. He sat down on the mountain. Interesting side point on that one, Sam, is that who was Jesus talking to when he was on the Sermon on the Mount?
Talking to his disciples.
Right. Not the people that were all around him. Not that it wasn't for their instruction. Don't get me wrong.
Doesn't it say sat down with the disciples and the multitude?
Hold on. I don't need it. Go ahead and shut her down.
Oh no, never mind.
His disciples came to him.
Yeah.
But notice by the time he gets done with the Sermon on the Mount in chapter 7, verse 28 and 29.
All of them people.
Now, we're not talking just about the 12 apostles, by the way.
Right.
It says disciples, and it's very specific in that. But that's a side note for another day. I just thought I'd throw that one in for free. We're going to go back to Acts chapter 19 and verse 35. So as you look at this theater, and I really love this, having this picture up here, the town clerk is now on stage. All right,
Do you want me to read the rest of the chapter?
let's go ahead and do that. Let's go.
And when the city clerk had quieted the crowd, he said, Men of Ephesus, what man is there who does not know that the city of the Ephesians is temple guardian of the great goddess Diana, and of the image which fell down from Zeus? Therefore, since these things cannot be
Hi,
denied.
Vera.
Hi, Vera. Verse 36. Therefore, since these things cannot be denied, you ought to be quiet and do nothing rashly. For you have brought these men here who are neither robbers of temples nor blasphemers of your goddess. Therefore, if Demetrius and his fellow craftsmen have a case against anyone, the courts are open, and there are proconsuls. Let them bring charges against one another. But if you have any other inquiry to make, it shall be determined in the lawful assembly. For we are in danger of being called in question for today's uproar. There being no reason which we may give to account for this disorderly gathering. And when he had said these things, he dismissed the assembly.
Thank you. All right. She didn't bring me tea. She brought me only water. Anyway, so we have this uproar in the theater. We want to show that again. And what we see, as we just read in verse 35 of Acts chapter 20, or 19 rather, 20 is at the top of my page. That's why I keep referring to it as Acts chapter 20.
Oh, sorry, you didn't want me to show
No,
that.
go ahead and show the picture. I wanted you to.
Okay, I didn't know if you were talking about the verse of the Bible. Or the picture of the Bible.
There. Sorry, Alicia's given me my daily injection. Okay, so
Make sure to squirm it in real good.
don't
And
tell him that. When so now what happens is here the town clerk. You see that little stage there, and the town clerk is there, essentially on this stage. And he said, this is the guy. This is the head honcho of the town of Ephesus. This is the one that conducts all the meetings, like a proconsul. I mean, like a governor type of a official. And so he gets up and he quiets everybody. He finally shuts them up. So imagine after 2 hours, everybody's getting kind of tired. They're looking for a drink, and he gets up and he says, he's beckoning for silence, gets them all quiet because this is the guy they know as the ruler or as an official of the ruler. And he then tells them, "You men of Ephesus, what man is there that knows not how the city of Ephesus is a worshiper of the great goddess Diana, and of the image which fell down from Jupiter?" So basically, he recounts their myth, their legend, that this image of Diana fell from Jupiter, that is the king of the gods, Zeus. Jupiter being the Roman name for Zeus. And Then he says, everybody knows this. This is a world renowned fact that Ephesus is a worshiper of Diana and that image of Diana came from Jupiter. Everybody knows this. What in the world is your problem, in other words? Seeing then that these things cannot be spoken against, i.e., what's your problem? You ought to be quiet and do nothing rashly. You know, there's a lesson in that verse for all of us. We often are prompted to quick, immediate retaliatory action. By what? By our emotions, right? Your volume went off because you muted yourself.
Did you see how big my eyes got right there?
Kind of.
I just saw a huge. Sorry to interrupt the study. There he is again. This lightning bug is huge.
All right,
Sorry.
that's
But
fine. God's glory. But he's not showing the lightning bug. Although he probably could if he really wanted to. Maybe. But what was it that set you call that a lightning bug? That doesn't look like a lightning bug to me. That looks like a mini June bug. Is its tail? Is it butt on butt lighting up? No, that's a June bug. That looks like a June bug. Yeah, it's light brown. I'll have to show you what a lightning bug looks like.
yeah. It's huge. Sorry.
Ezra, you'll have to get me a June bug so I can show him what huge looks like. So Sam says yes by our anger or offense. Now, what happened here was Demetrius, the silversmith, was angry. He was furious. Someone was messing with his income. Someone was messing with his livelihood, with his profit. How dare they? And as CJ pointed out earlier, there was the same incident, the same style of an incident as when they were dealing with the possessed slave girl over in was it Macedonia, Corinth, Philippi,
right? Philippine jelly, Philippi.
in Philippi, and so both of these incidents occur when Paul was messing with was interrupting cash flow, and the people affected rushed to rectify, to retaliate through anger, through emotion, and the clerk says, you know, we all know what's going on, so why are you so upset? There's a logical and a better way to deal with things than to immediately rush to emotion, to rush to do things or react out of anger or out of emotion. If we let our emotions control us, then we are in, for us today as Christians, if we let our emotions control us, then we are in opposition to what God has said.
Amen.
If you remember in the account of Cain, what did he do? The reason he murdered Abel was because of his emotions.
Right.
He let his jealousy and his anger control him. But remember what God told him?
You have a choice.
You have a choice. If you do well, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do well, behold, sin lies at the door, couches at the door. Only, or couches at the door, and to you will be his desire. Only do thou rule over it. In other words, he's commanding Cain to get a hold of himself, to control himself, to rule himself. And in fact, in multiple places throughout the Pauline letters, as well as in Peter's letter, we are told that self-control is required of the Christian, i.e., it is a fruit of the Spirit, as you read in Galatians chapter 5. It is also something that we are to add to our faith in Second Peter chapter 1, verses let's say 3 through 11, just as two examples. So self-control is something we need to do, and that means we need to rule over our emotions. Never react out of emotion.
Yeah.
In other words, when we do something, we need our entire being involved, our mental faculties as well as our heart faculties, our entire being. So our emotions and our logic, our reasoning needs to be involved together. We love God, that's our decision to feel a certain way for someone. In other words, for God. And yes, it can be challenging when someone tries to push your buttons. Let me give you an illustration. On my bus, I have multiple families with multiple children. And one of them this evening, I have 3 siblings, two girls and 1 boy. The boy is right smack dab in between the 2 girls. And the youngest girl was trying to tell me something about what another girl was doing. And as she's telling this, I'm teasing her. And her brother is pushing her buttons. In fact, it gets so bad with her brother that he's not letting her get in a word edgewise. And she gets upset, very much so. So she plops down in the seat and refuses to talk to anyone. I can't stand that on my bus. And so I immediately shut him down. Because he was really proud of the fact that he pushes her buttons all the time and gets her angry all the time. It's like, that's not what you're supposed to do. And so for a time, he didn't talk to me either. But I'll always stick up for the defenseless. I'll always stick up for the person who's being bullied, or even if it is by siblings. And when we got to their home, I made sure to give this young lady an extra hug and tell her, I said, you're my friend. And I look her directly in the eyes. You're my friend. I may tease you, and I will tease you, actually. I said, and I may squeeze you, because I'm going to give you hugs. I said, but you're my friend, and that means I'm always listening to you. So you go ahead and you tell me what you need to tell, because I'm listening to you. And don't let him push your buttons so much. I said, now remember, you're my friend. And I got her to smiling. But it really is important that you don't let people push your buttons. Once they know what buttons to push, you've given them control. And God says, that ain't right. You control your emotions, not vice versa. Don't let somebody else have control, because you do have a choice. it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
It is way easier said than done. Um, but there again, Sam, you have a choice. The choice is how you handle it. You can't control another person, no matter how much you try. Stop trying. The only person that you can control, the only person that you can change is yourself. So stop trying to control or change someone else, especially your wife, or in the case of a wife, especially your husband. Stop it. You married them for who they are, not who you want them to be.
That's right.
So you need to realize or remember that you married them for who they are, who they were. There's that June bug. Who they were when you married them. You need to remember that and to build upon that and change yourself rather than try to change them.
That's right.
That being said, the gospel changes people. Speak the gospel, speak truth, and leave it alone. Speak the gospel, speak the truth, and let God sort it out. Now, did you have something to add on that?
Just that you and I cannot change anybody's mind, even when, we are, uh, even when we are, evangelizing. We're not gonna. We're not the power of change.
But
I'm
we
not
have the.
saying.
Mhm.
I'm not saying we can't persuade, but we're not the
Right.
reason people change.
We can't reach in there and flip a switch.
Right? The reason people change is not my ability or how well I present the gospel. I'm not part of the reason. The message, or else I shouldn't be part of the reason. The message of the gospel, it's living, it's active, and it should be the sole reason anybody is converted to Christ. Not me, not my ability, the gospel.
The gospel is what our love for God and for the gospel is what propels us to go out and seek to spread it. But it is, as Paul said, I have planted, Apollos has watered, but God gives the increase. And so, in all things, you and I may never see the true effect that our words will have on a person. And it should never be about us in the first place. It always should be about the gospel. Um, Now, Sam, you say you stop trying to change them. I just be what God wants and pray that doing it right and they will see it. If you seek to change your wife, let's say, for example, um, to make her see your point of view, to make her see your point of view, then you have not stopped trying to change her. And it's something I've had to deal with myself, and this is why I'm talking about it, because when I first got married to Amy, I mean, let me put it to you this: I love my wife, I love her for who she is. And I tried to make her into, tried to get her to change into this into what I thought was a perfect wife. And it took me a while to realize, no, I married Amy for who she is, not for this made up ideal that I have. And I needed to learn to live with my decision, with the choice that God, with the one that God sent me, because I fully believe that God is the one who sent Amy to be my wife. And there's a whole long story about that. You can't, I couldn't change her. I didn't have the rights. Even as her husband, I just needed to, to allow God to do his work and let her be the person I married. And that's what I did. And you know what? Amy and I have been together for 23 years. And it still feels like Amy and I were just married last year. I don't say that to brag. I say that because if you can't hear it in my voice, it's a sense of wonder. It's a sense of beauty. And I still can't believe it. This gorgeous lady decided to accept my proposal and live life with me. We have 5 kids, and yet she's still as gorgeous as the day I met her. It's still as fun as the day I met her. And we've both made our own share of mistakes. I don't know about her, but I'd still go right through it all again because I'm still in the honeymoon phase. She's still the love of my life. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Amen.
Bring on another 60 years.
So, verse
Back to this.
verse 37.
Yes. So then, what the clerk says is a big lesson to us. We know the truth. Stop rushing headlong out of emotion into doing things rashly. Spur of the moment. Doing things without thinking it through. Being Cain. Raising Cain. Being Cain. Stop it. Don't do it. For you have brought thither these men, which are neither robbers of churches, nor yet blasphemers of your goddess. They're not saying anything against, they're not robbing your churches, and they're not blaspheming Diana. They're not.
So again, why is this happening?
Now, what guys are they talking about? Well, we have 29, in verse 29, we have Gaius and Aristarchus of Macedonia, Paul's companions. They didn't even bring Paul.
Right.
The man that Demetrius was accusing of all this action, they did not bring with them. And then they drew Alexander out of the multitude. Now, who Alexander was, we don't know. But the fact that he was mentioned by name possibly shows that he was a member of the church. It is an assumption, and I'm going to make sure I qualify that. We do have another Alexander mentioned later, and I believe that's in Romans. There was, who was it? The father of Alexander and Rufus. Do you remember who that was? Come on, CJ. You just went through Romans.
I think Romans 16.
It would be in Romans 16.
And doesn't look like Alexander's in here.
No, Rufus is in there, but not Alexander.
Rufus is in there, right?
Okay. I know he mentioned it. Where did he mention that?
Let me look it up. Alexander and Paul's letters. I love you, Sword. First Timothy 1:20, of whom are Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I delivered to Satan that they
No,
might.
that's the wrong one.
For Alexander the coppersmith did me much wrong, much harm. That's the only two places.
But we need Alexander and Rufus, the father of Alexander and Rufus.
Maybe I'll just do Rufus. One verse for Rufus, Romans 16:13. Let me look through the Gospels and Acts.
Well, yeah, you should have been looking through the entire New Testament. I bet you. Oh, I know. It's actually in the crucifixion, in the burial.
Then they compelled a certain Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus, as he was coming out of the country and passing by to bear his cross.
So, but I mean, we're told here of a Jew whose name was Alexander being drawn out of the multitude, and he was going to make his defense. We don't know why they drew him out. We don't. But we know that as soon as they noticed that he was a Jew, they began the shouting. And what is interesting is that the clerk says, you've brought these guys, in essence. Well, since they brought Gaius and Aristarchus, we know that he's talking about Gaius and Aristarchus. But then, if you throw Alexander in there, we don't know why they would bring him in there. But he was going to make a defense anyway. Well, what defense would a regular Jew have in regard to this, unless it was someone who was known to be a Christian? I mean, logically, it's implied that this was somebody who had some knowledge of the way.
Yeah.
So anyhow, and that's all I'm going to say is logically, it's implied that Alexander would have been able to make a defense of the way. Yep. A defense of why, why, what was going on. But they didn't even give him the opportunity. So the town clerk says, these are not robbers of churches. nor yet blasphemers of your goddess. They're not, they're lumping all gods and goddesses into the same category. Is that blaspheming Diana?
No.
Not really. It's denying them, but that's not the same as blasphemy or speaking ill of. It
Right.
says they're not gods, they're not goddesses. These idols that you make are not gods and goddesses. How does that have anything to do with Diana?
Well, Paul and Silas can't blaspheme somebody that's not real.
That's a good point too. But remember what the but remember what the actual point of Demetrius was. What was Demetrius's problem?
He was speaking
Verse
against these.
26, please, Ezra.
He was speaking against these goddesses, and the problem is, hey, people won't buy statues, so I'm out of a job.
Let's begin in the middle here. This Paul has persuaded and turned away many people, saying that they are not gods which are made with hands. Is that speaking about? Is that blaspheming Diana, or is that condemning idols?
Condemning idols.
So he's not talking about the deity, deity or non-deity of Diana. He's talking about idols. He's condemning idol worship.
Right.
And the town clerk gets right to the heart of that matter. They aren't robbing churches. They're robbing you, Demetrius. They're cutting into your profits. They're not even robbing you. They're not going into the temple and stealing money from them. They're just cutting into your profits. They're not even blaspheming Diana. They're just simply saying that your trade is a false trade. What you're doing is false. That what you're making is a representation of the goddess is not the goddess. Well, you can't argue with that logic, because an idol is not the actual God, right? If I made an image of what I took to be God, is that actually God?
No.
Oh. So the town clerk has a very good point there. So then he comes and he says, wherefore, if Demetrius, verse 38, and the craftsmen which are with him have a matter against any man, the law is open, and there are deputies. Let them implead one another. Let them accuse. Let them take them to court and sue them. Right?
It's kind of like a couple of chapters ago, we have Galileo said similar things when the Jews accused Paul. Look, I really don't care. The courts are open.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, Gallio, the deputy of Achaia.
That was in 7.
That's in 18 verses 12 and following.
Oh, yeah.
So, Gallio didn't have to worry about essentially losing their citizenship, their status as a Roman colony quite so much as Ephesus did.
Right.
Because Achaia was Greek. You can't deny his Grecian, their Grecian origin. Sam says it wasn't a work or an artwork either. It was just an idol. And that's very true as well. So Demetrius, or not Demetrius, the town clerk, and he's never even mentioned by name, by the way. He's like, if Demetrius has a problem of a legal matter, That's what the courts are for.
Yep.
Stop creating a mob and Russia, and doing this and
That's
use the law, go the legal route like you're supposed to.
that's 39 as well.
38. That was 38. Now 39.
Oh,
Now, if you inquire anything concerning other matters, it shall be determined by a lawful assembly. I'm going to pause there a moment. The town clerk is striving to impress upon people logic. Remember, we made the statement last week that people are stupid, not on an individual basis, but when they get together in a big, large crowd, people are stupid
right.
because they don't stop and think for themselves. They exist. They follow the herd. And if you don't think for yourself, you're not using your God-given abilities for one. But here's the thing, verse 39, Ezra. He's trying, in his logic, he makes a very passionate appeal by saying, if you're going to have any other matter, let's do it in a lawful assembly rather than in a chaotic one.
Right.
Ezra, would you bring up verse 39 in the KJV Plus, please? I want to look specifically at this phrase, assembly. You're going to be interested about it. Sam says not herd immunity, herd mentality, Sam. We need things bigger, and we need to be in the dictionaries, not in the commentaries. We need things bigger. Thank you. Now, scroll to the top of that, please. What's the word?
Ecclesia.
Oh, wait a minute. What does ecclesia mean?
The called out.
The called out ones. A gathering of citizens called out from their homes into some public place, an assembly. This is the same word that is used and translated everywhere and most everywhere else in the Greek New Testament as
Church.
church.
I wonder, is it always translated assembly in 39? I bet the Young's literal says lawful church.
Maybe.
Maybe.
But I'm not done with my point yet.
Right.
My point is, look at verse 40. 41. No, 40. Let's look at 40 first. Why did you switch out of that? Let's go down to concourse. Strophe, twisting up together, a binding together, a secret combination, a coalition, conspiracy, concourse, or desired orderly persons, a riot. So we went from a lawful assembly, an ecclesia, to a riot. Finally, let's look at the very last verse, 41, and the very last word. We have a riot in Ephesus that has went and has been called a church. The reason I bring this to your attention is because in the Greek, it doesn't matter. Ecclesia is always an assembly, whether lawful or unlawful. It is an assembly of people that have been called into a public place from their homes. What did we see here in this passage? In verse 29, we see how the whole city was filled with confusion. And having caught Gaius and Aristarchus, of men of Macedonia, Paul's companions in travel, they rushed with one accord into the theater. All right. And in verse 32, we have more people there. We have people, a lot of people there, some therefore crying one thing, some another, for the assembly. In verse 32, remember, see that? G1577, Ecclesia. The assembly was confused. A riot. People called together into a theater because of a group of men's anger and disorderly conduct. Oh. Now, take us over to the KJC in the dictionaries. Ecclesia is used 116 times in the King James Bible. 77 times it's church. Keep scrolling, Ezra. 36 times it's in the multiplicity, churches. And 3 times it's assembly. And all 3 of those times it's used in one chapter.
It's 19.
Interesting, isn't it?
That's interesting.
So, Ecclesia, the called out ones, you and I, as members of Jesus' called out ones, have a choice. We can be lawful and orderly, or we can be disorderly.
Amen.
Paul says God is not the author of confusion. Isn't that 1 Corinthians 14?
Yeah.
Because what does confusion do? Well, we see right here in Acts chapter 19 that the riot was a confused assembly. A confused assembly is riot, disorderliness. And Paul said, let everything be done decently and in order.
Good point.
Now, back over into 39, verses 39 and 40. Did you just bust my mixer? You better clean that off before you try to do anything else, my dear. You can go out of the KJV Plus. All right. Now, if you inquire anything concerning any other matters, other than legal or, if they have, like Demetrius, if they have a matter against any man, the law is open and their deputies let them then plead another, accuse one another. But if it's other matters, then let it be determined by a lawful assembly. Don't, Alicia. But if you inquire anything concerning other matters, here, what we already heard that one. For we are in danger to be called in question for this day's uproar, there being no cause whereby we may give an account of this concourse. This, what do we say it was? Disorderly, um, what was sostrophy?
Uh, I can't remember.
Ezra, let me see what it is. Binding something or other. Let me see what the Greek word for concourse was. You're going to have to go all the way down to, you're going to have to pick the Greek word before you can do that, my son. That's better. A twisting up together, a binding together, a conspiracy, a coalition, a concord, a riot. So we're going to, we don't have a reason for this riot. We can't account for it.
Right.
And so he reminds them that they have a very serious obligation to law and order under the Roman rules. And they were in danger of Roman occupation or losing their Roman status because of their riot. This was a very serious thing to these people because their status as a Roman colony brought in much profit to them, kept them as a stopping over, as a harbor for people to stop in. I believe they were on the coast, were they not? Or close to it.
Yeah, I think so.
You don't have your map with you, so. But anyhow, and they were in danger of losing all that and losing the favor of the Roman Empire. And stricter punishments could be meted out for this type of stuff. Let me remind you also, or let me give you an illustration of that in regards to one place that many Roman governors considered like the end of a political career if they were assigned this particular country to govern. It was a little unknown country called Israel, Palestine. It was until Pontius Pilate, it literally was considered a death knell to your political aspiration. You were sent there as a political exile, if you will. And Pontius Pilate was sent there, but because he was one to, the first actually, to quell the Jews and to actually have a good rapport with them and keep them quiet, he eventually was, if I remember my history correctly, and I may not, but he was eventually promoted and moved away, and other governors came in and had worse time. But notice he was not governor, by the way, when Paul was brought before Felix and Festus. That says something. But I mean, if you aspired to be a Roman emperor, you did not get assigned to the little known backwood country of the Jews.
No.
That was just no.
I mean, you just see how the Jews treated him in the trial of
Jesus?
Jesus, just pressuring him and uh, really making some politically uh,
Well,
questionable choices by releasing Barabbas.
Pontius Pilate was not well favored initially. He was not a very nice governor. When he came in, as I recall, he came in with a very heavy hand, and he had a lot of trouble with the Jews up until this time. And as you notice in Luke's account, he was not he and Herod were at odds until this account, until this time with Jesus. Because after that time, what happened? Well, he and Herod became friends because Pontius Pilate was willing to send Jesus over to Pilate. I wish I had my Bible encyclopedia with me and I could uh, give you some facts about Pontius Pilate. Other than that, but as I recall, he actually came in and I think he sacrificed in the temple. But there were other governors that had done some stuff similar. For example, during the Maccabean period of time, there was a governor who did that, came in and sacrificed a pig in the temple of the Jews and suffered the wrath of the Maccabees. What do I mean by the wrath of the Maccabees? Well, Judas Maccabeus went and um, slew him. And Judas Maccabeus was if I remember correctly, he was a priest. Let's see here. I'm trying to. Yeah, actually, the Maccabees were before the Roman incursion. They were in the Grecian period of time. Um, let me give you just a little bit. Yes, Herod helped get him out of the position as governor. O'Shea is correct on that. This was during the Hellenistic time. This was Hellenistic time refers to the time, that period of time wherein Alexander the Great conquered the world, died, and his kingdom, his empire, was divided between his four top generals. You have the Seleucids and three other guys. I'm trying to remember who those other three were, but let's see here. Let me see if I can figure it out real quick. Seleucids. I want to say it was the Ptolemaics, but yeah, Ptolemy the First Soter seized Egypt and Palestine for himself. Syria and the eastern portions of the empire fell to the Seleucids the First, otherwise known as the Seleucids. Each of these rulers began dynasties and were involved in almost constant intrigue and aggression to secure control of Palestine as the buffer. And for more than a century, Palestine remained under the Ptolemaic control. That's of the Egyptians. And we're not really told, this section doesn't go much into the other too, but we have those, the Ptolemaics and the Seleucids. Now, during this time between Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar, what we have is that time coming wherein the Maccabees come into focus. During that time, what you have, and this was right about 168 to 167 BC. So this would have been right at the time that the Roman Empire was gaining traction. Because Rome began gaining strength about 200 BC and onward. So we are some 42, 32, 32 years after Rome begins its strengthening and begins to start taking over the world. You have a period of fighting over the high priesthood going on. And the two because of this fight, then Antiochus, who was the who was he? He was the ruler of. He was Antiochus the fourth. So he would have been of the Seleucid. Yes, not the Ptolemaics. He was of the Seleucids. So Antiochus the fourth, Epiphanes, fanatic for Hellenism, was current ruler over Palestine, and because of that fight, the feud between the two rival claimants for the high priesthood, thought of it as a repudiation of his rule, so he come in and sacked Jerusalem. Desecrated and then he desecrated the temple by sacrificing swine on the altar of burnt offering. He decreed that all worship of Judaism was forbidden, destroyed all known copies of the scriptures, as in the Torah, the what is it? Why do I always forget that word? Do you remember what it is?
What word?
The Jewish compendium of scriptures. There was the Torah, and then there was all the other writings put together. And there's two of them, if not three. And one of them was the Babylonian, and then there was the it'll eventually come to me. Anyway, all these scriptures all the known copies were destroyed. Everything Judean or Mosaical was forbidden, made capital offenses, and if you tried to adhere to them, you were slain, you were killed without mercy. Now, The decisive reaction to these detestable measures came from an aged priest by the name of Mattathias Maccabeus in the village of Modin, northwest of Jerusalem, who he openly defied the king's emissaries, refusing to participate in the idolatry, and slew the first Jew who sought to comply with the royal edict. And then he fled to the mountains with his 5 sons. Under the leadership of the eldest, Judas the Maccabee, Jews who were zealous for their traditions began to wage guerrilla warfare with spectacular results. And Judas's strategy was a blockade of Jerusalem by the occupation of the surrounding countryside. Sealing Jerusalem from contact with the Gentile world would force the Seleucid garrison and control of the city to capitulate. 4 times the armies of Antiochus tried unsuccessfully to break the blockade. And on each occasion, the superior strategy, discipline, and valor of the Jewish forces prevailed over the superior numbers of the enemy. So in 165 BC, the Assyrian regent was forced to concede religious freedom to the Jews. So they took control of Mount Zion, reconsecrated the temple, and celebrated the feast of Hanukkah, or an event celebrated in the feast of Hanukkah. However, it was still under the rule of the Seleucid. And they tried to break the domination of the foreign infidels, struggling for quite a long time. First with Judas Maccabee, then Jonathan, and then Simeon. And they did finally achieve their independence in 142 BC, but they then became involved in internal politics of the Seleucid Empire. So that was just a brief glimpse. Sorry to take you on that little trip. And it is under these some of this conditions, or some of this line. What is it? For example, well, let's put it this way: Alexander Ballas, one of the claimants to the Seleucid throne. Jonathan Maccabee received the appointment of high priest, even though he was not of the legitimate Zadokite line from Zadok the high priest. Yet, here's the problem: when independence came, a grateful nation conferred on Simon and his descendants, now known as the Hasmoneans, permanent authority as the ruling high priest. Problem was, no one was inclined to remember or to show reverence to the covenant that God made with David and Zadok, the priest.
So you have a bunch of wicked emperors.
And then the biblical injunction against priest kings in 1 Samuel 13:8 through 14, 1 Kings 13:1 through 4, 2 Chronicles 26:16 through 18, cross-reference Numbers 16:39, as well as, and following, as well as Numbers 18:6 and following. That biblical injunction against priest kings were forgotten. You weren't supposed to have a priest king. So then you have the Hasmoneans, you have the Maccabees. They were ruling as priest kings.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Simon's son, John Hyrcanus. The Hymenaean state attained the height of its political power. And we can continue through lineage all the way down to, what was it? You have John's son Aristobulus, 104 to 103 BC. And he was the first priest king, which was then continued by his brother and successor, Alexander Jannaeus, 103 to 76. Jannaeus had passion for besieging cities, kept the nation embroiled in wars of expansion with disappointing results. Ironically, the people, wearied with politics and violence, turned to the Seleucid ruler Demetrius to depose this king. Janus was decisively defeated, but then succeeded in regaining his throne and ruthlessly suppressed the uprising. But his successor was his widow. So he basically left the priesthood and went for kingship. And as ruler, his widow, Salome Alexandra, reigned as queen for 9 years, with her son Hyrcanus II serving as high priest without civil authority. So, and then you get on down way into the idea, or into the rules of the Herodians. So, and let's see here. Yeah, what was it? Who was it? Herod was the son of Antipater, excuse me. So I got to find out where Antipater came from. Turbulent years followed in which the dispossessed princes of Aristobulus' line tried repeatedly to wrench Jerusalem from the firm grip of Rome and their vassals, Hyrcanus II and Antipater of Idumea. So Hyrcanus II, that was the son of Aristobulus and Salome, you remember. And then Antipater, I don't know if that was Hyrcanus' son or Hyrcanus' brother. Brother. It was his brother. So Hyrcanus became king, who was king, and Antipater of Idumea, what was he? Okay, no, I was wrong. Hyrcanus was confirmed as hereditary high priest and ethnarch of the Jews, while Antipater was made a Roman citizen and governor of Judea. So it's from Antipater we have Herod. See you, Sam. So
I think we're almost at the end of our study anyway.
We are at the end of our study. I was just bringing those in. Now we kind of got lost. Herod, we were talking about Pontius Pilate we were talking about how the consequences for for doing things like Ephesus was doing. Ephesus was going to be called into, was in danger of being called into account or to give an account for this disorderly riot. Why are you doing this? They were in danger of losing their Roman status as a colony, as a city of Rome, because of this stuff. And I mentioned the fact that there were other punishments that could have been meted out, and was comparing those punishments to like what was going on in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Israel, Palestine, with the Roman governments. And we went from that into Pontius Pilate, and how he was not a favored Jew. A favorite of the Jew, until after he appeased the Jews with the death of Christ.
Right.
And in that, he appeased Herod by sending Jesus to him. They became fast friends. And then he appeased the Jews because he gave in to them and let them, and crucified Christ. And then I believe, like O'Shea said, Herod was the one that helped him get out of Palestine, and was even, and so he was promoted, and he was moved to a different post, where he could, I think he eventually tried to make a bid for the emperor, and was unsuccessful. Anyhow, that's my dim ramblings. So, dim recollections. But we mentioned the idea that when Pontius Pilate came in, he came in with a very heavy hand. He quelled any and every uprising. I mean, he beat people. He threw them into prison. He slew any, so much as looked at him strangely, type of a situation. And I thought, it runs in my mind that he actually did sacrifice in the temple, which is why he was not happy, or not on happy or friendly terms with the Jews, until after this point. And then and that took me into the idea that the king, or the governor who sacrificed the swine on the temple, and into the Maccabees as they revolted, etc. So a little bit of history in there as well, from outside of the biblical. Oh, I want to show CJ a June bug. He was trying to say that this big thing in his world is a lightning bug. Then he falls off. Go grab him again. Just pick him up. He ain't gonna hurt you. He's about half dead anyway. Well, bring him out.
Oh, come on.
Wake up, Reba. Oh, wait. Reba's not here. Wake up. Angie, wake up. Angie's not here. Wake up, Vera. Wake up.
See how big he is?
Yeah, he's big.
He's about an inch long. This is a June bug. Imagine getting that one in your hair. Okay, would you take a look at the mixer? Alicia has done something to it.
Well, we hope you all been edified tonight. Remember here at CEM, we want to do three things. We want to glorify God, edify the saints, and answer any spiritual questions you may have. Thank you all, and God bless.
That way, whether we wake tomorrow to serve God here on this earth, or we wake tomorrow to serve Him up there, you know where we'll be, because we'll See you then. God bless.